Hello and welcome to the NBA DFS Slate Breakdown for Friday, March 15th. We're here, we're breaking it down. We have 5 games to go over on FanDuel, 6 games on Draftkings, and remember that it is Friday, so on Draftkings, there is no late swap. You are going to need to know what you're doing for the entire night right at lock. So be prepared for that. Understand what news is going on to put yourself in the best position to win some money. Now, before we get into it, please come join us at LionStar, $39.99 per month, and it gets you access to everything we do, all the props, all the DFS for every sport. It's a great time to join us, and we are the lowest price with the best value in the industry. Now, let's go. All right. Starting in on FanDuel, as always, going over the point guards first, we are going to cover the one game that is on DraftKings as well, as there's a bunch of interesting pieces in that game too. But starting off, Terry Rozier, highest owned guy. He is 7K. Look, I do think his price is up there a little bit for me when this team is healthy. It is a very good matchup. I don't hate if you get a little bit of him. However, I am not going to be getting over the field on his ownership. That is for sure. Don't mind him. Just don't love him. Jalen Suggs is about the same situation. I do have an issue with his potential ceiling. I am getting some of them a little under what the field is. Field's at 29%, it looks like, and I'm probably in the 20 to 25% area. And really the reason I do have that much is because his dual position eligibility. He does have a decent floor, but the ceiling just isn't quite there, and that is my issue. He might be able to get you 6x, but the likelihood of anything on top of that is just slim. So don't love going there, but I am absolutely getting some. And then next we got McKee. He once again looks good. He's been running point even with Trey Mann back. Got solid run, still had 8 assists, had 25 points. He's scoring points in a lot of different ways, so not too shabby in this matchup versus the Suns, who are terrible versus point guard, which we talk about over and over and over again. So I think you can go there. Next, we got some pivots here. Emmanuel Quickly, his price is way up, but his ownership is way lower than it should be, I think. It is a slow matchup versus the Magic, who have a very slow pace, but they still aren't great versus point guard. 27th overall versus point guard, and Quickly has just been doing everything lately. Over the last 5, 1.23 fantasy points per minute. You add in the fact that he's playing an absolute ton of minutes, and they're not great versus point guard. It makes a lot of sense to want to go to Quickly, especially at a little bit lower ownership on this smaller slate. And lastly, we got Devin Booker. Obviously, the Hornets are not a very great team, and Booker has as high of a ceiling as anybody in this league. Put up 80 versus the Pacers earlier in January, so late January there. But really, he's been living right around 50. And has that huge ceiling. So at low ownership, I think he's a shot that I'm going to probably be taking a few on. And his prices came down a little bit. So definitely a bit intrigued by Booker. And one of the things that we've talked about with that team as a whole in the Suns is that it is generally Durant, Beal, or Booker that goes off. One of them pretty much does it every single game. So having one of those guys isn't a terrible idea as well. Now, on to point guard on DraftKings. Remember, we do have this 6th game over here, and it is coming in pretty high owned. We got DeJounte Murray and Keaton George there, as well as Jaden Ivey as a 3 high owned. So DeJounte Murray, guy has just been absolutely incredible without Trae Young. They also could be getting Jalen Johnson back, but they are without Sadiq Bey. He's just required to do a lot on this team. Don't mind going back there. He has, the ceiling to make his 9.5K price tag worthy, and he has a solid floor, so I don't mind going there. Next, we got Keaton George, 6,600. look, this guy is playing a ton of minutes, and there's no Jordan Clarkson. There is no Chris Dunn. His minutes are very secure today as long as he doesn't get in foul trouble. I would expect 36, which we have him for 35.5. I think he could get on, get up to like 38 minutes. And it's just an absolutely great matchup versus the Hawks. They're 22nd overall versus point guard. But then there's also the aspect that they just play at a pretty fast pace. So this game is a faster pace. There's a decent total to it. So I think there's a lot of factors going to George that I do like him, and I don't mind getting to him whatsoever on DraftKings. Now, on to the matchup tool. For point guard here, we got McKeekick coming in first, DeJounte Murray, and Keaton George all there with Suggs right behind it. And I do really like this McKeekick, Murray, and George situation, and that is where a lot of the ownership, I believe, will go to. Now, shooting guard on FanDuel, we got Duncan Robinson, Jalen Suggs, Gary Trent, all as high-owned aspects. Gary Trent is questionable. If he is out, just more ownership is going to flow to Grady Dick and Emmanuel Quickly. But I think Trent is an interesting spot. He definitely gets a decent bump up without Scotty Barnes and RJ Barrett on the active roster here. Both of them are out today. So he's in a decent spot. The issue, Magic have been very good versus shooting guard. So it is a tough matchup. He relies on scoring. He is a guy where he is only putting up those big fantasy scores if he's scoring, 20 plus points. And this matchup's going to be a hard one. They're keeping teams or shooting guards to 14 a game. So I think it's going to be a little tough for Trent to do that. Don't love his ownership spot, but how many minutes he's going to play, he's going to have a high usage rate. I will have a little bit, just not trying to go overboard on him. Some pivots I like. Grayson Allen. I like this Phoenix Suns spot versus the Hornets. I don't think the Hornets are very good. They're away, so maybe the Hornets are able to stay in this game a little bit longer. But we've seen Grayson Allen have a solid ceiling this season. If he can get us into the 40s, you're going to need to have him most likely. So I like the spot for him. His minutes have been very solid lately. However, Eric Gordon is coming back, so I do expect that to eat into his minutes a little bit. I don't expect the 36 he's played lately, but 34 is very, very plausible. He could get over that. I just can't, project that at this point. So I do like Allen, like Booker. We went over that already. And getting over onto shooting guard on DraftKings. Got Jaden Ivey, got Colin Sexton, got Marcus Sasser. So Jaden Ivey, he's going to play a lot of minutes. There is no Oscar Thompson, no Quentin Grimes. So he's going to be forced to play a little bit more. Mark Sasser is also going to play a little bit more. We saw him on a higher owned spot. And I think they're all fairly interesting. Sasser is a little spark plug off the bench, can score points quickly. And we've seen him, if he gets, the 22, 24 minutes, he's done well. I don't know if he's going to get that many, but there is at least a chance. I wish his ownership was a little lower, but he's at least a little bit intriguing, as is THT. They're going to need some guards. THT is the third guard. He does become a little interesting. Just no idea how many minutes this guy gets. We know he has a solid ceiling when he gets the minutes. Played 17 last time, 24 a couple games ago. Your guess is as good as mine as far as those minutes. Utah really doesn't like him that much, but they go to him in a pinch, and tonight is a pinch with two of their guards out. So THT is a little bit interesting. Now, on to the matchup tool. We got Vit Krejcik as a value spot. And look, he's been playing decent minutes, 22, 22, and 31 his last game. With them still banged up, he likely gets those minutes. We have him at 22 right now. If he plays well, maybe he gets a few extra. Don't love the value. Don't know if there's much of a ceiling there, but he is very cheap and playing some minutes, so I get why some people might want to play him. And in a good matchup here. Colin Sexton, I think, is extremely interesting. 0.08 little fantasy point per minute bump in the matchup. And we know he is a guy, when he gets his minutes, can crush. So I think he's got to be on your radar. I'm not getting a ton of him at this point, but if this guy gets, 36 minutes and he's playing well in a good matchup, you could absolutely see a big score from him. KCP gets a little bump up, but don't absolutely love the spot for him. And now, getting over to small forward on FanDuel, we got Jimmy Butler, Duncan Robinson, Paolo Banchero. Jimmy B, his price is getting up there. He hasn't been great over the last 3, but he's been playing very, very solid minutes. The other thing to note is their team has been losing. He needs to get that corrected. It is versus Detroit. He could absolutely take some anger out on them in a good matchup and get there. He has the ceiling at this price. Just understand his floor is way low, and I don't think he should be this high owned. Don't hate going there. I just don't love it. Duncan Robinson's a little interesting. The ceiling is there. I do think, though, with the team, getting back to healthy, there still is no Tyler Hero, still no Kevin Love. I don't totally know if the minutes are going to be there, but he is of interest. If he gets hot, he can fill the stat sheet and really do well. Paolo Banchero is somebody I like a lot in this spot. No Scotty Barnes, hurts their defense a ton. No RJ Barrett, hurts them a little more because they now have no size outside of Kelly Olynyk and Jonte Porter. I would not be surprised if Porter and Olynyk play on the court together a little bit just because of Orlando's size. But if they don't, Banchero is going to have a size advantage and be pretty much just as quick as anybody out there too. So I think Banchero is in a very, very interesting spot, and definitely will be getting to some of him, as well as his partner Franz Wagner, who Franz is, priced up a little higher than he probably should be, but there is a nice ceiling there, and I could definitely see him going for 6x. My worry with Franz is the ability for, 7, 8x just likely isn't there at that price. Other pivots, Simone Fantasio. So he played 38 minutes last game. He didn't get there, fantasy point wise, but still put up 11 shots, which is, around where he has been when he had 2 big scores. So his price is a little lower. I wouldn't quit on him just because of his last bad outing. The minutes are going to be there. I'm intrigued, and they're going to need to hit some shots to stay into this game. Fantasio definitely could do it. Bruce Brown, once again, is interesting. He's going to play some minutes. If Gary Trent is out, it helps him a little bit more, helps just solidify that floor of minutes. And I don't mind him. Don't hate him. Don't mind him. Do think his price is getting up there a little bit, though, where it takes away from his ceiling. Getting over to small forward on DK, we got DeAndre Hunter, we got Jimmy Butler, and Simone Fantasio. Hunter is interesting. There's no Sadiq Bey. If there's no Jalen Johnson still, he's going to be forced to play some minutes. He played 33 last game, 36 the game before that. And before that, he was just, playing 28, 30, something off like that. But those extra minutes really mean a lot, especially if Bogdanovich is out, who's questionable as well. This team is beat up. They may rely on Hunter for a ton of minutes tonight. And I find him interesting. He has played much better off the bench than he was when he was starting. So do worry slightly about him sliding into that starting lineup. But if he's coming on off the bench, playing that Bogdanovich role, and there's all those extra minutes up for him, I am intrigued. Jimmy B, we talked about. Over onto the matchup tool. best matchups, Franz Wagner, Grayson Allen, Michael Porter Jr. Have talked about them all. Look, this Denver matchup versus the Spurs is interesting. If the Spurs stay into the game at all, then and Denver plays late into this game, then it becomes very, very interesting for both sides of this game. But you're just going to need that scenario for those fantasy scores to really get there. Power forward, Jimmy B, Paulo, and Michael Porter Jr. Paulo we went over. Simone we talked about. Franz we talked about. Alexei Povisky we got to talk about. Al Poku, if you will. Not the best matchup versus the Suns. However, this guy has been now with the team for 3 games, played 8 minutes, 11, and then 27. So his minutes have gone up every game. The 2 prior games were both blowouts, limited minutes. Then the last game, they were in it till later in the game, and he played 27 minutes. I am intrigued. If those minutes stay there, I think at 4,300, he's extremely interesting at a low price. Will those minutes stay there? I have no idea. We have him projected at 18, which is a safe number now. If you push that up to like 22, which still relatively safe, then he starts to become very interesting projection-wise. So I think this is a spot where you probably need to make your own assumption here. If he plays extra minutes, bump that projection up a little bit. I personally have bumped it up a little bit. I think there is, a decent path with low ownership that, I might want to exploit. So I've bumped it up a little bit. I do think he is a punt worth considering, and right now I am taking that punt. A lot can change throughout the day, though, as news changes. On DK, we got Jonathan Isaac, DeAndre Hunter, Simone Fantasio, all of which are interesting. As we've talked about, the issue with Isaac is his ceiling. However, the guy can put up fantasy points in bunches, has put up 30 in 25 minutes, put up 25 in 16, so he can possibly get there. I just really, really wish that they would give him some extra run because the guy is good, but they're just being extremely careful with his injuries because he's had a long list of them over the last couple years. So I do worry about his ceiling in a 6-game slate, but nonetheless, he's a value spot you can talk about. Getting over to the power forward matchup tool, we got Paulo Banchero, Isaiah Stewart, and Jeremy Sochan coming in as the highest owned spots. Paulo looks great, I think. Center spot, Larry Nance, Nikola Jokic, and Wendell Carter Jr. as the 3 high owned. So Nance has been playing, 16 to 28 minutes. I personally am not going to be getting too much Nance. I do actually like the pivot onto a low-owned Jonas a little bit. His prices came down. He's in the high 5s now. Issue here, we have zero idea what they're going to do minute-wise versus the Clippers. But Zubac is, a solid big center, so they may need Joval to go against him a little bit. Last time they played, there was no Zubac. He only played 11 minutes. The 2 times before that, 28 and 23 minutes. I think there is a path to him playing more of the 22, 24 minutes. If he gets to 24 plus, then he becomes extremely interesting at low ownership. But, it's a roll of the dice. You really never know what they're going to play center-wise, how many minutes they're going to get you. Jokic, I think, is absolutely great. We have seen centers just dominate the Spurs, and Jokic can absolutely do that again. The only issue here is possible blowout, but at least it is in San Antonio where the Nuggets just are not nearly as good as they are at home. Bam Adebayo in Detroit. He's been playing very well lately. This prices came down. The ceiling is there. The matchup is there. Once again, blowout does come into play on that game. But it is only an 8-point spread. The Denver Spurs game is 10.5. So all the games tonight have a decent spread, which does lead to, a little more game stacking probably being a good idea. Because if one of these games stays close, then the likelihood of that game being, having 4 pieces in it that are optimal becomes much higher. So I think Bam is interesting. Jonte Porter, I can't trust the minutes. He's played 22 and 21, but he produces at a very good level when he plays. If he starts, he would become much more interesting because he would likely be at center with Olynyk at power forward, which they could do because Orlando is big. And then obviously the pivot Poku is there as well for center. And getting over to DK, Jonathan Isaac, Larry Nance, Wendell Carter Jr. Carter Jr. is in a great matchup. Sometimes the minutes aren't fully there, but Toronto's just been getting crushed by big man. And he's been good recently. So 1.17 fantasy point per minute over his last 5 starts. And in a very good matchup, if he keeps that up, there's definitely a path to success. And on to the matchup tool, Wendell Carter Jr., clear cut best matchup on the slate with Nikola Jokic and Nurkic right there. I do like Nurkic. It's just he's another guy where his minutes vary. With this team getting healthier, I would expect him to be back more in that 26 to 28 minutes rather than 28 plus. He really does need that 28 plus to get into those perfect lineups. So all in all, guys, it's been a great week. Another good slate on tap here. Good luck tonight. I hope you guys win some money, and I'll be back next week. Adios.